Welcome back, my friends, to the series where we force comps and see how they work. This is from Mission for Tuition, and a little bit about Mission for Tuition. We are trying to raise money for our son's middle and high school tuition. He has to go to a ridiculously expensive special school. We only make money from the ads. There's no GoFundMe, no donations, nothing like that. So please like, share, and comment so the video can get out there. The more people who see it, the more who see the ads, the more money is raised for tuition, and everyone's happy. In this video, we are going to be forcing Hextech strikers. Now, when this season started, it was really strong. Then it got nerfed, became not so strong, and then it was buffed again and is now considered a good build. So we're going to get into it and see what happens when you just uni-focus on going with Hextech strikers. We'll jump to the first augment and then go through the entire build. Nothing here is super exciting for Hextech strikers. End up going with blue battery just because more mana is always helpful. Now, Hextech Striker is something you're going to build in phases, with various champions coming in and out, because a lot of your key champions are up at 3 and 4. So you'll have to hold on until then. But you're going to start with the basics. Your two key champions are going to be Jarvan and Nocturne. Jarvan is likely going to stay in the whole game because he is both a Hextech and a striker. Nocturne will be key in the first part of the game, but you're ultimately likely to get rid of him for Sivir, who is also a Hextech striker later on, but she's a 4 cost, so you're not going to get her early. I usually like to try to pick up Rek'Sai early because that will give you the striker bonus. So if you have Jarvan, Nocturne, and Rek'Sai, you'll have 2 Hextech, 2 striker, which is pretty strong early on. In a perfect world, I'm looking for Sejuani next because she is a Hextech bruiser. So then you will have 2 strikers, 3 Hextech, 2 bruisers. From there, you're going to want to see what the game is telling you. Even though you're forcing builds, there is some variety. You want to bring in Gnar because he is going to be a striker and socialite, so it's going to give you the socialite hex. Swain might fit into your build since he's a Hextech. Same with Lucian can come in as a Hextech. Your keys are going to be when you get Irelia and Sivir into the game. They are your strongest strikers. Your goal is really to end up with 6 Hextech, 4 strikers, or if you manage to get emblems, you can end up with 6 strikers, 6 Hextech, or 6 strikers, 4 Hextech. It all depends how it works out. There may even be a chance to bring the Moo Cow into the game, but I would really reserve that for very special circumstances since he's a Colossus and is going to take up 2 spots. The key items that you're going to put on Nocturne in the beginning are Infinity Edge and Last Whisperer, because you're going to want to transfer them over to Sivir because her ult will bounce from person to person, which will mean it will shred a lot of armor. Those are also excellent items for Irelia, so if you get the 2-star Irelia first, you can put those items onto Irelia along with a blue buff, and she will absolutely wreck teams. Like I said, there's lots of different ways for this to end up, but you start off with Nocturne, with that Infinity Edge and Last Whisperer, and go from there. Now, this first game has been treating us really well as we've gotten all the champions I really like to get at this point, and then we get concussive blows as our augment. This will cause any critical hit to stun an opposing player, which if you can get it onto Sivir, when her ult goes off, she's essentially going to stun the entire team. Now, in this particular game, I decided to make an early item swap over to Lucian just because he tends to hit more targets, and then had the chance to pick up a spatula, which along with a sword will make a striker emblem. So I now know I have the chance to get to 6 strikers. When you get to stage 7, you roll down and hope you can find your strikers. In this case, I got lucky and I found Sivir and Irelia. I have a Rek'Sai sitting on the bench, a Gnar in the game, and the ability to make a striker emblem on my bench. So I have all the ability to go to the 6 strikers. This also gave me the chance to increase my Hextech without having to lose any champions. So I'm now going to be able to get to the 6 Hextech, 6 Striker in this match. Now I want to show you just a little bit of how ridiculous this all is in a match like this, because watch what happens when Sivir ults. Everyone gets frozen in place and then completely torn apart. It almost doesn't matter what the team you're up against is, they will go down. Now, even with this ridiculous combination, this game did involve some twists and turns, and I may take it and make it its own video at some point, but it came down to 1v1 against the obligatory Yordle team. But as you can see, once Sivir is able to ult, their team is pretty much rendered inert, and she is able to clean house and finish them off, including the Jinx that lands directly in front of her, leading us to first game, first victory for Hextech Striker. Game 2 began, and the augments came out, and I was kind of in a "you've got to be kidding me," because right off the bat, Striker hard. So I'm able to start off with 2 Strikers straight off the bat, and I know I'll be able to get up to 6, so I can quickly get out the Sejuani, Jarvan, and Rek'Sai, and I have my 2 Hextech, 2 Bruisers, and now 3 Strikers just because. I'm still using Nocturne as my item holder because I'm likely going to want to keep all of my Strikers in the match, and Nocturne is one person I can definitely take out when the time comes. We get ready for our second set of augments, and we get Hex Nova, which is going to allow the Hextech buff to impact all champions. So it will hit our Strikers as well as our Hextechs. So we're going to go ahead and grab the gnar, get him into the game, because that will then give us the 4 Strikers. We're going to want to hold on to as much gold as possible, because when we get to 7, we want to roll for Sivir and Irelia. One of the dangerous aspects of this build is that you've got to hold on to as much gold for 7 as possible. This is why it works really well in ranked, and not necessarily as well in HyperRoll unless you get really lucky, because you're probably going to lose some matches through stage 6 as you're holding back gold. Your goal in 7 is to roll through everything and then hope you get an additional augment like this. Why not grab a Striker crest? That way you can go to 6 even if you don't get everyone. Now in this case I was set because I had an Irelia on the bench, but the way Striker works, even if you go to 7, that's not going to hurt you because every Striker is getting a huge attack damage bonus. So having additional Strikers is not going to be a bad thing. Get the 2-star Sivir, get gnar in there, and we go forward with 6 Strikers. Sadly in this game I got a little cocky. I did not think I was going to lose, and I decided to increase the Socialite buff instead of grabbing Nocturne and going for the 6 Hextech, which might have kept my champions alive longer, but it gave them the opportunity to finish off my Sivir, especially against Syndicate snipers, and we end up in a disappointing 5th place. There's always the woulda, coulda, shoulda TFT HyperRoll, but what we do is go ahead, move on to the next match, and see what we get. Unlike the last couple of matches, there's nothing here that screams Hextech Striker, so the best bet is going to be the healing augment, since that will work with all of the champions. This game had a really rough start because I wasn't able to get my full combination of Hextech, Bruisers, Strikers until I was into stage 5. I was struggling through stage 4 without a Rek'Sai, so I didn't have the Strikers at that point. Our next set of augments, at least we have the opportunity to get a Hextech crest so we can continue to build Hextech up, but we're still short some Strikers at this point. I've managed to get the Infinity Edge onto Nocturne, so I am looking for the last Whisper that I can ultimately put over to either Irelia or Sivir. And as you can see at this point in the match, this team is in some real trouble. I have 6 health left going into the NPC round, heading into the final augment. And I am desperately searching for either Sivir or Irelia. This is why I've held my gold. This is why I've lost so many matches, is because I haven't been rolling down because the chances of picking up those champions was so small. But I roll through 50 gold and am not able to find Sivir or Irelia, which is what I'm going to need to have the 4th striker that will take me through. These last augments aren't really very helpful, so I just go with random item components in the hopes that I can get items that I can put together that allow Nocturne to carry. I go with the Bloodthirster, the Infinity Edge, and the Last Whisperer in the desperate hopes that once I get a Sivir, those items will work. Since I had gotten J4 to gold, I put the Locket on him along with tank items like the Sunfire Cape and the Ionic Spark so he can be doing some damage defensively. I went with the blue buff on Lucian because that means he will cast a lot and be all over the map, and that will keep him away from teams like this where they had a lot of jumpy, bouncy things that are going to try to get to him. This way he can stay away and do some damage, and as you can see, it works out really well here because that Kha'Zix would likely have gotten him if he didn't jump away, kill him, and finish them off. With the situation extremely desperate and only 2 health left, I find the Sivir I've been looking for. So I'm able to get the items for her, onto her, and hope that this can bring me out of the basement of this game. And just to drive home the point of how impactful Sivir can be, she comes in at 1 star, shreds everyone's armor, and allows the rest of my team to finish them off, allowing me to crawl out of the basement of this match. And not only did I crawl out of the basement, but it came down to me versus an Innovator Clockwork team that had a far better setup than I had when I did Innovator Clockwork because their Echo had the Frozen Heart, which slowed down my Sivir's attacks significantly and allowed them to destroy me, but it's GG and a respectable 2nd place finish for game number 3. And while my first couple of games started off with great augments, it seems to not want to be doing that anymore. None of this is particularly useful. I decide to go with makeshift armor just because it'll allow a little bit more tankiness early on for my frontline champions. Notice I've been going to get a sparring glove in pretty much every match, which is why Nocturne is starting with sparring gloves, Last Whisperer, Infinity Edge. I'm going after item first on the carousels. Heading into the 2nd augment, we're doing okay in the middle of the pack, and we get concussive blows, which is an excellent augment and one I'm very happy to see. We've also picked up a gnar in the NPC round so we can have that additional striker and give us even more power. I decide to make full use of the concussive blows augment by adding infinity edges to more of my strikers because it ticks when a striker hits someone with a critical strike. So now I have an infinity edge on both Rek'Sai and Gnar. I've stopped using Nocturne as the item holder for this game, and it's mainly going to be Rek'Sai. I roll down in 7, but I'm unable to find Irelia or Sivir. I go with the Forge in the hopes of finding another crit item, but not so lucky. I'm debating between Randian Sanctum and Eternal Winter, but decide on Sanctum just because it'll allow an area around which we can gather people and make them more tanky and more resistant. Still looking for that Sivir or Irelia, not finding them. Luckily, I am finally able to get a Sivir, but rather than take the items off of Rek'Sai because I don't have a backup Rek'Sai, I pulled items off of Gnar, since I did manage to have a backup Gnar. And that was enough to cause enough stun damage across everyone to keep me in the match when I probably should have been eliminated. In an act of desperation and to try to stay in this game, I go ahead and dump Rek'Sai for Mukau so that I can pick up a little extra tankiness in the hopes of holding these teams back, thinking that maybe the amount of stun I'm putting down is going to help me. But this Chemtech team is able to get through me way too quickly and ends up pushing me down into 5th place. Game number 5 continues the theme of augments that don't fit exactly what I want. Disintegrator 1 will help, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for. This game started with a Gnar, and normally that would be assigned to me to go Yordles, but nope, we are forcing Hextech Striker, and Gnar is a Striker, so he gets to stay in the match. Heading into the second augment, we're in fairly good shape. Nocturne has both of the critical items. We get a Tome of Traits, and we have a good set of champions together. We've got 3 Strikers, 3 Hextechs, 2 Bruisers, we've got our Gnar already, and the augments actually give us a Striker trait, Overpower, which means basically every 3 attacks the Strikers get an increased chance to crit, which isn't going to matter for Sivir since she has the crit automatically, but it's going to be good for the rest of them. I grabbed the Enforcer emblem from our Tome of Traits because Sejuani is an Enforcer, so this gives us a chance to just automatically lock someone down on the other team. I decided to play this one a little differently because I got an early Irelia, so I sold Nocturne, grabbed Irelia, and used the items on her. Remember, with the last augment we picked up, they're all going to be getting increased crit chances, so I don't necessarily need it on Sivir, but on Irelia those will be incredibly effective items as she continues to attack over and over again. The augments give me another really difficult choice. Striker Crown, I can get 2 emblems immediately and go straight to 6 Strikers, or go to 7 or 8, but Share the Spotlight will allow me to clump my champions together and have them all be empowered by that spotlight, which I think is going to be more effective in the long run of this battle. Now you will notice in not too long I have switched items over again. I ended up getting the 2-star Sivir before I ever saw the 2-star Irelia, so I sold her, switched the items over to Sivir, and it worked out really well. After analyzing what I was facing, I decide once again to pull the Mukau in, because I know I'm going to need to get into their backline and stun people for Sivir to do her maximum damage, and the Mukau is the one who's going to be able to do that. You can see him go in, knock the entire team up, and hold them in place long enough for Sivir to do what she needs to do and finish them off, guaranteeing me at least 2nd place. Unfortunately, the other team was an Innovator Scrap team with a 2-star Jinx, and even a super strong Mukau is not going to save me from that. So Sivir does the best she can, but Jinx is able to take her out, and I end up finishing in a very respectful 2nd place for the final game. So let's look at the scoreboard. Game number 1, we absolutely crushed it, 1st place. Game number 2, 5th place. Game number 3 was a respectable 2nd place. Game number 4, back into 5th place. Game number 5, I really felt I could have done better and maybe won, but we ended up in 2nd place. We take the 1 plus 5 plus 2 plus 5 plus 2, all of that divided by 5 to get our force score, and it turns out to be 3.0. Now this would suggest that Hextech Striker is as strong as Syndicate Sniper in terms of being able to force it. But having played the games, I just don't feel that's the case. This build relies so strongly on 4-cost champions that
it doesn't feel as safe as Syndicate Sniper or Innovator Clockwork, which relies on lower cost champions to really make the build. This falls apart if you don't get Sivir at the right time, and there are a few games in here that were saved just at the last moment, and they could have been 7th and 8th. So if you're looking for something to force, I just wouldn't do this specific build unless you're getting clear signs from the augment gods telling you to do it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video and the series. If you have suggestions, leave them in the comments below. I'll be doing Chemtech with Warwick next. Have an awesome day.